I think a lot of people should just say, no, we're not going back to that. We're not going back to work.
She tweeted and then deleted what she'd posted. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had gleefully opined on the crash in oil and the sharp losses for stock prices. Quote, "You absolutely love to see it." That's what she wrote. She's clearly happy to see CO2 emissions cut sharply. Got that. But if it takes 20 million Americans suddenly unemployed, businesses ruined, and thousands in lockdown misery, surely she should express a little less glee and a little more understanding of the catastrophe.
Let's talk about sweet, sweet black gold. Oil, that's possibly the weirdest way I could have introduced this, but I do want to talk about oil. But I did want to talk about this because I've seen a lot of confusion over the past 24 hours, and that's because the price of oil in the United States actually turned negative for the first time in history, with prices dropping by more than $50 per barrel to negative $37. That means that anyone trying to sell a barrel of oil actually has to pay their buyer $37 per barrel instead of the other way around. Right? And so this is actually a huge deal, but a lot of the information that's out there about this situation, it's super confusing and dense unless you're an economist or you work on Wall Street. So what I'm gonna do here is try to break down why this happened, what it means for the economy, what it means for the oil industry, and what it means for you. Right, so a couple of different things that cause this just insane and historical dip. And the first reason, actually incredibly simple. Demand for this oil is low as hell right now because of the pandemic. People are driving less, planes are flying less, the demand is just not there. In fact, according to reports, it is now around 25 to 30% below what it was when the economy gradually began to shut down starting in January. But even while that demand was falling, oil-producing countries still kept producing oil even up until early April. Right, like we talked about before, there was this huge dispute with OPEC where the members wanted to cut production because of the pandemic, but Russia refused. Long story short there, that led to a price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia, Saudi Arabia responding by flooding the market with even more oil. And then it wasn't until April 12th where everyone reached an agreement to cut oil production by 10%. Right, but by April 12th, the damage was already done. Most places in the United States were shut down, air travel was totally dead. And that brings us to reason number two. Not only was demand low, but the supply was greater than demand because it maintained and even increased during a time when it should not have. Also created another problem: storage. Excess supply here means there are literal tons and tons of oil barrels with no one to buy them and nowhere to go. The thing is, the oil industry here is not alone. We've seen other industries, they have too much. Right, in recent weeks, we've talked about the demand for milk now being low because of all the shutdowns. Farmers have too much supply. They actually dump the milk. But today, we're not talking about milk. We're talking about oil. And when you do that with oil, it would be considered an environmental disaster. And so that's why normally any extra oil, you put it in storage. But with the way more oil than we're used to that we're talking about here, that storage has started to run out very quick. And understand, this is not just in the United States, this is everywhere. According to energy experts, the whole world has an estimated storage capacity for 6.8 billion barrels and nearly 60% is filled. But it is an especially big problem for the United States because, for example, one of the most critical storage facilities in the United States, it's in Cushing, Oklahoma. It's where oil traded on the market is delivered. And according to reports, that facility, which can house 80 million barrels, only has room for 21 million more. Right, so we're talking about almost 75% full, and that is incredibly significant because analysts believe that this lack of storage at this super key facility is what set off the panic among oil traders that eventually resulted in the negative prices. And that that actually brings us to number 4 of why we're seeing negative prices. It's actually caused by the way that oil is traded. Oil is traded in the market based on its future price. And so what that means is that when traders sell oil on the market to buyers like oil refineries, what they're actually selling is a contract that says that they will sell the oil for a set price at a set future date. And that is known as a futures contract. And so when someone says oil prices, they're not talking about a physical barrel filled with oil. They're actually talking about the price of the futures contract. So when you buy a futures contract, you're agreeing to buy 1,000 barrels of oil, and the price of that contract depends on the supply, demand, and the quality. Each contract trades for a month, and when it expires, the buyer either needs to take physical possession of their oil or store it. But here, no one wanted that oil because there's no demand and no place to store it. And because today is the last day to buy those May contracts, what we saw yesterday was just a massive rush to sell. So you had traders trying to offload those contracts as fast as possible so they didn't have to incur the cost. And when they couldn't find buyers for May, it sent the prices into the negatives for the first time ever.